Welcome to the Transmission Coaching Podcast, powered by ATRA. Today's podcast is sponsored by Gears Magazine, your magazine for the automatic transmission rebuilding industry. Be sure to get into Gears. Get your free subscription at gearsmagazine.com. Click on subscribe. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the Coaching Podcast. And now here's your host, Coach Lance Wiggins.
Welcome to the Transmission Coaching Podcast. My name is Lance Wiggins. I'll be your host today. With me is Keith Clark, our technical director from ATRA. We're going to be talking a little bit about Gears Magazine. If you get Gears, get into Gears at gearsmagazine.com. And if you don't get your Gears, a good hard copy, you can always subscribe to Gears Magazine. You can get your free copy of Gears Magazine come to you. This is the August issue of 2024. It's a great day to fix transmissions, so let's get started. Welcome, Keith. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is just under 2 months away from Apex and Expo. Very excited about that.
Yeah.
First time we're going to be at Industry Week, on Industry Week, during Industry Week. We've always been on the coattails, or always been on the cuffs, one of the two. That's a long truck for our suppliers, a long truck for our international guys. So really looking forward to doing something together for the first time in our history. You know, the course of action has been placed. We're moving right ahead. Registration is open. If you haven't checked your registration, you're an ATRA member. Make sure that you go to powertrainexpo.com for your registration. So we're going to check out Gears Magazine August issue. Page 30, it is Diagnosing Toyota's AC60. The page, the 2 pages that we're looking at right off the bat are sponsored by our friends at TransTech. With the bonded pistons, ask for TransTech. So tell me a little bit about the AC60, Keith. It looks like it's about ready to take over the Toyota small truck world, kind of like the A750 did for, I think, almost 2 decades. Is this the new transmission that they're going with? I mean, and tell us a little bit about it and how it works.
Well, I'd have to say it's a new transmission that Toyota's going with. It's surprisingly much more simpler than the previous models, which is, when you think about more gears, there's a 6-speed transmission where, of course, the 750 was a 5-speed. And the A340, which was, the mainstay for the longest, was a 4-speed. So it's about the same size as the 4-speed transmission, just physically as far as the footprint is concerned. But it's much more simple on the inside, only 1 sprag. And you transmission builders know, Toyotas, if you got big mitts like me, you reach inside those cases and you kind of cut yourself up because of all the sprags and everything you got to finagle in there. So it's an easier transmission to build, simpler gear train. Man, it's definitely something that they engineered for the long haul.
And it looks like it's going behind like the 2.7 gas, the 2.4 gas and diesel, 2.8, smaller V6s, that kind of thing. That is built for better fuel economy, I'm assuming?
Yes, definitely. And of course, Toyota had the world market in mind. It goes behind a lot of the diesels that are overseas as well. Mm-hmm. So again, anything rear wheel drive, it seems like they're using that transmission, even on the Land Cruisers, the six-cylinder Land Cruisers.
No kidding.
Yes.
That's a pretty good sized vehicle, right?
It is. It really is.
With 7,500 pounds?
The 6-cylinder one is a little bit light, just because
not built like they did in the 80s, back when we were kids, right?
No, it's a little bit lighter, so definitely.
Toyota has four full flow solenoids to control the individual clutch packs within the unit. Tell us a little bit about the full flow and what the advantages are.
Well, the full flow solenoids is something that Toyota went to with this particular unit, and basically it's controlling all of the oil for the oncoming and offgoing of the clutches. So it's dedicated to a clutch. The solenoid is basically pulse width modulating, so you're not worried about accumulator, relay valves, things like that. So we've got a solenoid, and we're going straight to a clutch. And
so no more accumulators. So as far as the transmission world is concerned, accumulation is done primarily now through solenoids and adaptive strategy. It's not there's no longer any reason to have an extra accumulator piston, spring, or all that. So this is one more way to fail, right? I mean, that's just what it's like getting rid of the dipstick. Let's save some money and stop putting that in there, kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
All right, that's fair. It looks like you utilize clutch to clutch, which is a synchronous shift. What's the advantage of that between that and say putting a band in it or something like that?
Well, with synchronous shifting, basically you're able to utilize the computer controls more accurately. Of course, coupled with direct or full flow solenoids, basically shift timing. They're trying to get down to about 0.3 of a second as far as overlap between the oncoming and offgoing clutch. So yeah, that's it makes for a more crisp and positive shift. And the computer can actually monitor that and dial it in so precisely where it feels seamless. So we're saving a lot of fuel when we're able to shift and control that through the computer like that.
On these units on page 31, you talk about drivability complaints. So these units are calibrated from the factory to shift into high range and lock up as soon as possible. The programming is intended to provide the best possible fuel economy. That's kind of contradictive, right? I mean, contradictive. When you shift a transmission into sixth gear at 30 miles an hour, I mean, you're lugging the motor, right? So I'm assuming what it's saying is on a light throttle, it will shift. You're a grocery getter, like Bob Warnke would say. Shout out to Bob Warnke. Not going very fast. It'll upshift to whatever gear it wants to upshift to. It doesn't big deal. The load is no big deal. Hard throttle, it's going to shift, but it's probably going to stay within a certain RPM range, within 1,000 RPM, kind of just real tight. Ding, ding, ding. And then moderate throttle, that's what you're referring to, right? Like it's as you're going, you're just kind of halfway into the throttle, a quarter into the throttle, you're probably shifting to sixth gear by 45, something like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Lance, because when you're in the city, especially like San Antonio, I'm sure Phoenix, wherever you might be, typical driving habits with this vehicle, you will notice that it's kind of selecting a higher gear than what the typical customer would desire. So the engine RPMs are down and we're pushing on the gas pedal and saying, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's a common complaint, a customer complaint. Most of these vehicles are equipped with a power button. So
like a power mode?
Yeah. So a lot of times at the dealership level, they say just use the power mode and be done with it.
So you might be subliminally saying this. It's reprogrammable. Is it tunable?
I would say it's tunable. Now, this is something in the aftermarket where this is a real life.
All right, yeah. Let's. I'm gonna switch over to page 35. Here's Witt talking about their tuners. Witt, if you guys are interested in doing some tuning here in San Antonio, Texas, China Grove here at the IBO, you're welcome. If you want to check out some of Witt's reprogramming tuning. September 28th in Denver, Colorado, as well as October 12th in Wisconsin. So if it is reprogrammable, it is tunable. This is an advantage to us, big time. I mean, you get a customer complaint like that, especially. I mean, I'm thinking of my guys. Zach Evans up in Longmont. Shout out to Zach Evans. Here you are in Colorado. You are up and down. Utah area. Ryan Snow. Shout out. Up and down. Mountainous driving, that could be pretty monotonous. That could drive a customer crazy.
Oh yeah, and mountainous terrain. Yeah, busy shifting is another complaint. Now on the factory side, they do allow some. Well, they do offer some programming updates. So if you're working on these and want to kind of keep it factory, yeah.
So they used to say, what is it? Abnormal driving conditions or abnormal driver errors can cause abnormal driving conditions, right? So if by pushing the button it fixes the problem, they might just have the button pushed all the time. Then it's going to be like back in the 80s. Hey man, can I get the overdrive button off so I can just have 3 speeds? When with the E4OD kind of thing.
Yeah.
Geez, that brings back a lot of crazy memories. The strategy of this unit is a little unique. You talked about the full float solenoids. So this is the failure management mode, and you mentioned here that the strategy is activated only if the solenoid is stuck off, or when the solenoid is stuck on, power is cut to that particular faulty solenoid. So, in this example, and there's no Tecum inside the transmission, right?
No.
Yeah. So Toyota's like, I'm going to keep it out here. We're going to put this transmission together. It's going to be inside. There's only, and we're talking a little bit about this here, a few sensors that you can test outside the transmission. So inside, you have a failure on a particular solenoid, probably a circuit code. Let's just throw that out there, right?
Okay.
What you're saying is that it can look like you're just missing a shift. It's only going to cut that one solenoid off. It's not going to cut all of them off. So in most transmissions, when you have a fail problem, it second gear, third gear, reverse. That's all you get.
Yeah.
In this case, you could have first, fourth, second, third, first, third, second, fourth. Tell us a little bit about how that could be difficult to diagnose.
Okay, and this is very important to realize and understand. They do have what I refer to as smart failure modes for this particular transmission. Being full float solenoids, we can have a clutch that, if the solenoid fails mechanically, it could be stuck on completely or not even be able to come on. So, of course, with the speed sensors, input output speed sensors, we are looking for that speed differential when we make that commandment. If it doesn't happen, then the computer will say, okay, that solenoid is now working mechanically and hydraulically this gear isn't happening.
Yep.
So it will actually have a pre-programmed workaround so that the vehicle can still drive and you're not stuck on the side of the road or stuck in some ridiculous gear like a second gear trying to get back home from 100 miles away.
Sure.
So it's a very, intuitive type of failure management mode, if you will.
Yeah, smart. Very smart. So, like I mentioned before, you got an input, and you just mentioned the two. You got an input-output sensor, you got a TR sensor, and then you got your bulkhead connector. TCM and ECM are located inside the vehicle. Much easier to test, much easier. I mean, this goes back to early 90s testing now. The simplicity of it.
Yes.
You can test your solenoids accurately. You can test your amperage accurately. You can test basically everything you need accurately without having the TCM located in the transmission. That's smart.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good call. The next two pages on 32 and 33, sponsored by TRNW and also Midwest Hard Parts. Want to shout out to those guys. Thank you guys so much for advertising in Gears Magazine. Fluid servicing issues. This is interesting. So Pat Burrow from LubeGuard, Pat, looking forward to having you come to our podcast, man. I think it'll be a great opportunity to speak with you. Pat's local in the San Antonio area, been with LubeGuard for many, many years. Is probably one of the smartest guys I've ever spoken with as far as fluid issues and fluids are concerned. But you mentioned here that Toyota requires the WS fluid to be used in this application. Now that when you write something and you say, guys, you have to use WS or equivalent. I'm asking for a friend, right?
Okay. Now, I always put that in parenthetically because WS fluid is rather unique as far as its viscosity and the way that it changes viscosity with temperature. Now, this is something that Toyota designed, of course, with the engineers, with the clutch coefficient of friction, as well as, just the driving conditions. So there's a lot when you change fluid. The expectations for the computer are going to change relative to that. And that's when you get shift quality issues, shutters, harsh shifting, things like that, when you just change fluid. Because WS fluid specifically expands as it warms up. So Toyota uses the temperature sensors in the transmission to actually manage the shift quality. So it's shifting kind of firm at first, And then once it warms up, then the normal programming takes place.
Which brings me to the last page of your article, which is the ATF thermal degradation indicator, the old ATF TGI. The TCM is calculated to monitor the for the condition of the transmission fluid. The ATF thermal degradation indicator, the TDI, uses various factors such as vehicle mileage, actual engine runtime. That's interesting. That's hours, right?
Yeah.
Engine load history, transmission and coolant temperature history, and other parameters to calculate the relative depletion of the transmission fluid. So, essentially, what they're saying, this is not a fill for life.
No.
We want you to change the transmission fluid.
Yeah.
We want you to change the transmission fluid because we want this transmission to go 150, 200,000 miles before you run into a wearing issue. Is that what they're saying?
Pretty much. That's what you can infer for sure.
It says here, if the value is 50,000 or more, the transmission fluid must be serviced. Must.
Yes. So herein lies something very important for mechanics and technicians out there. It's important to reset that when you do rebuild a transmission or service the fluid, because this is something where the strategy will change after you get past that point. And it's going to say, okay, I'm going to go in emergency mode because this fluid is old. And yeah, it's going to say, all right, I got to do something so this transmission doesn't break because I got old fluid in it.
Is this setting a reminder, like a service soon light or, wrench light or anything like that?
That I don't know. That's a good question.
All right. Well, listen, that's a question for our audience. If you know anything about the Toyotas and if they set a service engine soon light or anything like that, we'd love to hear from you. One issue that you have here is the C1 clutch failure. You mentioned here that the C1 clutch is the input or the forward clutch, of course. Stamp steel design, similar to that of the previous Toyotas. The drum can fail due to line pressure spikes caused by worn valve body or extended operation and failsafe. So there's two issues here. There's worn valve body, which causes the pressure spike, and then the application of the drum itself, which causes problems with the snap ring, I'm assuming. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, basically being a stamped steel drum, I have to reference a common Ford transmission, the 470W, where, if you go to high line pressure repeatedly, it's, just a matter of time where you're going to put so much pressure on that stamped steel surface, it's going to want to kind of whisker out, and it will actually fail. It will break through. So that's something, especially if the customer just doesn't want to bring it to the workshop to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And, they, of course, engage it into drive. Then you're actually hitting that C1 clutch. That snap ring is going to beat that drum, and the drum is going to lose.
So the failure is no movement.
Yes. There you go.
And the failure is just put in the gear, no movement at all. Right?
Yeah. You'll have reverse, but no forward.
Yeah. Right on. Well, thank you so much for enlightening our guys. Again, we want to thank our advertisers, WIT, whatever it takes, Midwest Hard Parts, TRNW, and TransTech for advertising in Gears Magazine. Get into Gears. The August issue of 2024 is out. September's on its way. And we hope to see you in Expo November 4th through the 7th. If you decide to come in and check us out, there's an awesome reception Monday night, November 4th. Ribbon cutting, great dinner, good food, good eats, and then we've got a great lineup of technical information for you. So, Keith, thank you so much for your time today. As always, it's a great day to fix transmissions. So let's keep fixing transmissions together.